Welcome to another episode of Eyes on Golf. I'm Jeff Eisenband. James Nitties is coming up. Maybe you know James Nitties from his career as a professional golfer on the PGA Tour, won on the Korn Ferry Tour, or maybe you know him kind of with what he's been doing more recently, which is a lot of broadcasting golf. I've gotten to work with him on PGA Tour Live, but he's been really focused on being the top analyst for Korn Ferry Tour Golf, working with Shane Bacon, who's been hosting that over on Golf Channel. So he has seen some awesome stuff from the next wave of talent on the PGA Tour. And on top of all of that, I actually interviewed him right before he called PGA Tour Q School with Shane. So we made this evergreen. So we weren't necessarily talking about that. We were talking about golf as a whole, but that gives you a little bit of an idea of his schedule, everything that he's doing. Korn Ferry Tour is just getting rolling this year. So I wanted to save this, get it out as you hear about the life of James Nitties and why he has kind of moved into this correct position for him, this perfect seat, calling the Korn Ferry Tour on Golf Channel. Eyes on Golf, James Nitties right now. We have no one's ever a former golfer, I'd say. Potentially still active professional golfer, James Nitties, also an analyst on PGA Tour Live, an analyst, I would say lead color at this point for the Korn Ferry Tour on Golf Channel, and the host on CBS of One Shot Away. James, welcome to the show.
Mate, thanks for having me on. You must be scratching the barrel, but it's a pleasure. I've loved working with you in the past, and I look forward to our chat today.
Well, I told you, we're taping this on Friday. What is it, December 8th? We'll see when it actually airs because, of course, there's just in December. This can't be a quiet time in golf. There's more news that's popping out right now. But I interviewed Andre Gonzalez. I interviewed you, basically the two most unique looking players probably in the last 2 decades when you think about it. You guys are exactly the opposite of the maybe traditional khaki wearing PGA Tour player.
Yeah, I think you've covered all bases with mustache hair or facial hair. Look, you might even have Johnson Wagner on next. I think you're going down the list, but Andre is an absolute blast. I've had some fun times with him. Excellent player, one of the best short games I've ever seen, and he's an out there cat. I'll just put it that way. You always have a good time when you're hanging out with Andre. So there you go. You're hitting the facial hair. That's what I like.
But one thing similar to Dre, I want to ask you the same question. When someone asks you now, "What are you?" What do you tell them? What do you do for a living?
I'm a ex-professional golfer and wannabe broadcaster. I think I'm in the transition period. It's like you said in the intro. It's hard to let go of I still play professionally because I still love it, miss it, but I do know that I'm not good enough to play and earn money. So I say you could put the professional next to my name, and I'll still try to do little qualifiers here and there. But really learning and addicted to getting into broadcasting and finding my voice, my cadence. I don't know how you say it in the world that you've lived in for a while. So it's that's pretty much my tagline. Whenever I meet someone that's like, "What do you do?" And apart from, I don't know. So that works out.
That sounds it's very in the middle right now. It feels like it's very transitional is the best way to put it. I imagine you're chomping at the bit for your Champions Tour, your PGA Tour Champions card one day. But until then, you've got this Korn Ferry Tour, especially the Korn Ferry Tour, I think is where a lot of your broadcasting has been in the last year or two. But before we really get deep into that, I want to get back deep into your career because for me it's one of the most interesting things as I meet all of the former players like yourself. Maybe you didn't win on the PGA Tour, but when you look at your junior career and kind of always feels like everyone on the PGA Tour was a prodigy at some point. Maybe not everyone, maybe 75%, and then you've still got those great 25% stories. But junior golf, you were a star in Australia. What was that like growing up?
Oh, fond memories. Playing junior golf in Australia. I was luckily enough to grow up in a town, Newcastle, that had a lot of good talent. Nick Flanagan won the US Amateur. Nathan Green won on the PGA Tour. There's many more names, and for some reason, small-ish town, maybe 400,000, but I was living in the burbs, so it was very fond memories. Junior golf was competitive. There was good. Every golf club had a good crop of junior golfers. It's something I don't see in America. There's clinics, you get free lessons, but there's not the camaraderie where, you dump the kids at the golf course and they just sort it out and babysit themselves and play golf all day. So I think
Sounds like the life.
it was a life. Mother dropped me off in the morning, and Dad would pick me up when the sun was going down, and I still didn't want to leave. So it's I think it's a way why you're seeing, not to digress, but a lot of countries, smaller
Mhm.
countries that have really good players coming in. South Africa, Ireland. You've got Australia, where it's the golf courses are the access is a little easier to people that maybe mightn't have a lot of money, and it's a place where juniors can thrive. So, the junior system in Australia was fun. A lot of junior tournaments, a lot of competitive events when you started getting good. Then you'd get selected for state teams, you'd get selected for Australian teams. But another thing that's a little different to America, like college is kind of the selection process over here, but in Australia, you would represent your state. Now, there's a lot of states in America. There's only 7 in Australia, so 50 here. But that'd still be pretty cool if every state had their own kind of round
Mhm.
robin tournament where you'd be like, hey, I'm going up against California today versus Texas. Well, and it's really where you come from. So for me, traveling around Australia, I think golf is underrated there. The golf courses are underrated there. It was some of the more fun times of my life. Actually, I still feel great when I think back to those times.
I mean, that was a longer answer than I expected. I think you can feel it. I think when you talk about those smaller countries, definitely what's going on in Scandinavia right now, it kind of reminds me of what we're seeing. I mean, I was talking with someone yesterday, right, about the Victor Hovland, Ludwig Aubert. We got to get this right on air,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in all of that, Christopher Ventura obviously came with Victor Hovland to Oklahoma State. So much talent coming out of that, a similar situation maybe to Australia when you were growing up, and with you, I think it's very interesting to understand that you win the New Zealand Amateur, which is a very prestigious amateur tournament. You come to the US, you play the Western Amateur, you lose in 19 holes to Ryan Moore in what some would say, James, is the greatest amateur season of all time. So you gave him a run for his money. Now I know you didn't go to college necessarily in the US, if I'm not mistaken. So what was going on during that time of your amateur career?
So, okay, I got selected for the Australian team. So one of the best amateurs in Australia. I wasn't the best, not that I thought, but I
Who
got
was
it
the
done.
best?
I'd probably would have put that to maybe Michael Sim,
Mhm.
who had a pretty lucrative career on the PGA Tour. Had to withdraw from the Masters. You've got Jared Lyle, um, who passed away a couple of years ago. He played on the PGA Tour, but the best. Leishman wasn't even the top amateur at that time. Who I grew up with, Mark Leishman. Andrew Buckle was kind of the guy that I thought was going to be a Tiger Woods prodigy, and he, injuries, anything. But Stephen Bowditch was another guy that I grew up with, won twice on the PGA Tour. So we got a lot of wins that have come out
Mhm.
of the PGA of Australia from my kind of junior career. Not me, unfortunately, but it's that's the way it goes. But
Well,
yeah,
New
so
Zealand am. We're saying, yeah, not at
exactly,
the
yeah.
at that PGA Tour level, no, but
Yeah, Tiger Woods never won the New Zealand Am at Chisholm Park, and I'm sure he was scared of the tenacious James Nitties coming through. But um, it it's what you said. Like, so those were the players coming up. So for me to come over to America and be able to, play a couple of events, I scrounged some money together. And then I ran into Ryan Moore. Like you said, I think it was one of the best amateur kind of stretches. He won the USM Pub Links, Western M against me, the NCAA championship individual
yep.
title, and He won the Sahali Players Championship, which Andreas, who you
Yeah.
had a pod with previously, he won that. Now I turned up, and I was, pretty good, but I didn't know anyone. No one knew me. I broke the scoring record, I think, by 4 shots. So any other year, I break
Congrats.
the record by 4. Thank you, and I lose by 2 to Ryan Moore. So it's like, then I get to the Western Am and I'm in the final with him. It's a stroke play that turns into a match play. So I'm playing the final day with him. He's 5 under through, I might be a little hazy on my details here, but he was 5 under through maybe 12, 13 holes, and I was 4 down with 5 to play. And I birdied a couple of holes. I started to see him kind of get a little nervous, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. He's been a cruise control all day. And then I win the last, and I sent it to overtime, which is extra holes. And I remember because this kid came up to me. I didn't have many supporters there apart from a couple of the Australians that were playing in the event also. And I remember he came up to me. He's like, "You got him, Nitties. You got him." And I'm like, "Sweet. I got some American supporters out here against, the tenacious Ryan Moore." And he hit it in the hazard off the tee in the first hole in the sudden death playoff. I hit it down the middle. So I'm like, we're good here. Somehow he gets to find the ball. It's not in water. Sorry, I called it a hazard. It's a penalty error. And he finds it, hits it to the back of the green to about 60 feet. I hit a wedge to about 8 feet. I'm like, we're still good here. Of course, he rolls in this huge putt. It gets longer every time the story, but it's around about 80 feet. It ran directly over the line of my putt, and then I missed it, lost to Ryan Moore on the 19th. And look, one thing that I didn't get to play in the US Amateur. We went to, me and Michael Sim went to qualify for it the next week, and I think this is one of the stupidest things in American amateur golf is the fact that I lose to Ryan Moore and finish second in one of the biggest amateur events, and I still got to go qualify for the US Amateur. So didn't get to play the US Amateur, but that was, being able to go up against Ryan Moore, who's probably now had a little, a career that he would have thought that might have reared more wins than he has had. Like only 5 wins on the PGA Tour. He's made $33 million, but maybe only I think the best he's had in a major is a ninth. But coming out as he was the next Tiger Woods. If you were
Mm-hmm.
thinking about someone transitioning from college to the PGA Tour, only other person that ever done that was Tiger that didn't go through Q school. So 33 million's pretty good. But yeah, it was fun to kind of see him in his prime. And, as me, a little amateur golfer coming from Australia and being able to get a taste of, high potential golf in America.
Well, between you and Dre, if someone dropped on to planet Earth and this was all they listened to, they'd think that Ryan Moore was Tiger Woods. And in a way, in the amateur scene, he basically was. For you, you move on from this, and right as get me correct if the timeline's wrong, right as you're about to turn pro, you get diagnosed with reactive arthritis. You were 22 years old. What does that mean?
So, okay, the timeline's only slightly off. You were close. So I turned pro. I didn't go to college, like you said. I turned pro at around about 22. I got a couple starts into some of the biggest Australian events. So ones that have just been played, the Australian PGA, which Cam Smith won last year. He didn't play too good this year. And then I got in the Australian Open. Now, I finished second at the Australian PGA at my second professional tournament I'd ever played. And Bob Esters was in the final group with me. Peter Lonard ended up winning, but I'm a kid that's just turned pro. I'm at 100 grand off the bat. I was like, this game's pretty easy if I can print money like this. So I earn a little bit of money. I made about 140,000 in my first 4 events, which in Australia that's huge because
Yeah.
we don't get big events. These events are $1 million purses, so you have to play well. In those select few events, and we kind of earn your money, and then you go travel the world. So that's what I did. I came to America. I did. It was called the Nationwide Tour. No, Nationwide Tour back then. Sorry, there's so many names, but Nationwide, which
You
is
have
now
to get those right. You have to know
yes,
the history.
Nationwide Tour back then went to web.com. Now is Korn Ferry Tour. But so I went and just did the Monday qualifying circuit. Pretty good pro start to my career, and I think I ended up Monday qualifying for about 6 events in my first try, and and I was on kind of track to kind of get my card through Monday qualifying, and I come down with pretty severe back pain that was referring all the way down my leg, and go to doctors on the road. You're going, I didn't have a lot of money, so apart from what I was earning, but this was just going into my travel fund.
You had
So everyone's
$140,000.
Yes, it's that disappeared pretty quickly traveling America doing Monday qualifiers. I'll tell you that. And I had some debts to pay before I actually got on the road. But I digress. But so I cut a long story short. But after going to a couple physios, doctors, while I was in America, I woke up one morning and I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. I had to get an ambulance to the hospital. Felt like someone was sticking a knife into my hip. Um, I got diagnosed after 2 weeks being a pincushion in the hospital because this is a very rare disease or autoimmune
Mhm.
disease in America. Back then, no one had it. So finally, a rheumatologist came in. He knew what I had. Very common in Australia, but not here for some reason. And it's what it does is it inflames the joints. Fluid can't pass through the joints. So my knee was the size of a small basketball. My foot was the size of a tennis ball in around my toe, like just draining fluid every day. I didn't know what was going on there. So yeah, cut a long story short, it took me out of professional golf for about a year. I finally got to go home, get the treatment I needed. Was told that this is something I'd deal with for the rest of my life. Was on medication for about 6 to 7 years, which every now and then I could get a really bad flare up, but I could play through it because I wasn't making anything worse. It wasn't like a slip disc or a broken bone. It was just the pain. Now I'm, for some reason, an autoimmune disease you're supposed to have for the rest of your life, and I don't want to sound like Aaron Rodgers here, but I don't have it anymore. With the right diet, exercise, treating my body well, watching my blood cell count, my rheumatoid factor is zero. So it's pretty cool to know that I got rid of it after about 7 or 8 years. But yeah, it was a little deliberating to the start of my pro career, but we shook it off and got back to America the next year and then started the mini tour venture and the Monday qualifying again.
Was there a moment there you were nervous if it was, just going to be done at age 22?
Yeah, there was a scary moment where the rheumatologist came in and he said, "I'm going to give you this drip, and what it does, it sends this medication through your system and shuts down any virus that's in your body." Now, if you do this drip, um, it's uh, it's one of those things. It's not illegal. It's not quite legal in Australia. It was legal in America, but if you get a cold, or if you get the flu, or if you get any sort of compromising, virus to the
Hmm.
immune system, what the drip does is shuts down the immune system, but to clear out the viruses. So I could have died, and when I went back to my specialist in Australia, he's like, "Yeah, we don't do that here. There's about a 6 or 7% die rate where." But it worked. So, I was living on the edge. I wanted anything. So there was times where I was like, I think I lost something like 60 pounds, and off a 170-pound body, it's not a lot to lose. So it was grim there for a little bit, but not like I never thought I was going to, never thought I was going to die. So, that's probably a little bit, a little on the crazier thinking side, but no, we got back, put the weight back on, and then once I knew that I just had to deal with the flare ups and it wasn't going to hurt just anything else in my body, it was actually pretty comfortable to come back and start playing.
Before we step away from sort of the junior amateur early career, I do want to ask, in Australia, what was Adam Scott like growing up?
Exactly what he is now. He was probably a couple of years before my time, but I was 14, 15 when he was winning every amateur event in Australia. Um, he was Tiger Woods. It was him, Aaron Baddeley, and Matt Jones. Now, Aaron Baddeley, as an amateur, won the Australian Open and then turned pro and won the Australian Open the very next year as an 18 and a 19-year-old. Aaron Bailey was sponsored by Nike. He was, touted as this new prodigy. Had the swagger, had the confidence. Came to America and was kind of like, "Yep, I want to be number one in the world." And he was like 20 years old, and yeah, Meanwhile, you got Adam Scott just sitting there going, "Hang on a second, fella. I've got one of the prettiest swings in the world, and I know how to." And he could putt back then. He could actually make 6 footers comfortably. So he burst onto the scene. I think Adam Scott only spent 1 or 2 years at UNLV before he went pretty much straight to the PGA Tour. But there was a couple guys just coming up when I was young, and I'm like, wow, these guys are unbelievable. And it was those three, little above my time, only a couple of years, but yeah, he was the Tiger Woods of Australian golf, apart from Aaron Baddeley.
Just the swing was pretty about him at the time.
Yeah. Also, early stages for Adam Scott, he was sponsored by Burberry. Now, this is a little bit after
Yeah,
his
yeah.
professional career, but yeah, before he went to Uniqlo, which he touts as a brand that's looked after him for a long time. He was rocking the Burberry, so he's a very svelte, very good-looking, and charming young man.
That's one way to put it. You go over back to your pro career. So again, similar to Dre, you qualified for the PGA Tour via Q School at the time. So you make this jump, not necessarily by way of performance on the Korn Ferry Tour. You had mentioned Nationwide Tour, not by performance anywhere, but in Q School, you come in tied for second, and all of a sudden you're on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and super lucky too, because I'd had about 4 or 5 cracks at Q School before this. So, I got my PGA Tour card. I was around 26, 27 through Q School, but I'd been like 4 times prior, and I think I'd got to second stage every time, and two of the 4 times I missed by a shot getting to final stage Q School. So through Australia and through playing great golf in Australia, I found myself up the top of the earnings, the money list, which they gave 3 players from a lot of tours around the world. So, European tour back then, the Australasian tour, the Asian tour. So if you were the top of the money list, they'd give exemptions through to final stage. So I remember I made a huge putt at the Australian Open on the last hole, played with Robert Allenby, lost to Craig Parry. He won the tournament, but it was a 6 footer that would eventually get me to final stage PGA Tour Q School in America. So I came to America not having status. Well, I'd been playing mini tours and, Korn Ferry Tour events by Monday qualifying, but I'd never had any status on any of the tours. So to get the exemption into final stage and know I was going to have some sort of Korn Ferry Tour status nationwide back then, which, lately going to final stage Q School, you can finish 100 on in the tournament and maybe get 2 or 3 starts. But back then, if you finish like 90th to 100th, you're going to get 10 starts on the Korn Ferry Tour. So my goal was just to get my Korn Ferry Tour card. Top 70 back then. It was top 25 to get your PGA Tour card. So I go out in the first round and I shoot 9 under. And I'm like, okay. No, actually, sorry. Yeah, first round I shoot 9 under. I'm like, hang on a second. Now I'm running, I think I was leading or running second, and my goals had to change. And what really hurt, or let me say sucked back then, was the fact that it was 6 rounds at final stage Q
It's
School.
a
So I've
marathon.
never been more nervous and sweated that I did after getting myself to the point where now I'm like, I could go to the PGA Tour if I just finish in this position. So, look, it was one of the most exciting weeks of my life. I saw some unbelievable golf. Who the eventual winner of that season in 2008 at final stage Q School was Harrison Frazier.
Yep.
And in the fourth round, I was paired with Harrison Frazier, and he missed a 4 footer on the last for 58. So, 59, not too bad. That'll pump you up towards the top of the leaderboard. And then I played with him in the final round, and he was 7 under through 10 holes. And I walked over to him and I was like, look, mate, you're 12 shots in front. Just relax a little bit, will you? You've got your number one position. It's all good. And, he's a lovely guy. Unfortunately, kind of struggled with some injuries, hip surgeries. Still won on the PGA Tour, but I feel like he could have had a sensational career if he wasn't, I think he had double hip surgery, maybe. I could be wrong here. I haven't seen him in a long time. But, yeah, he was just kind of riddled with injuries. But that was some impressive stuff. And then for me to get my PGA Tour card coming off playing Hooters Tour, mini tours. I was a kid in a candy store. It was one of the best moments of my life to know that I had a full season on the PGA Tour. It was really really fun.
Should also mention that you were on the big break at one point when you were trying to make it here. So this was, despite everything that we talked about your successful amateur career, it took a few years to get there, to get onto the PGA Tour, and then you were on 2 straight years. What was that experience like from a feeling of, because you had a taste of some, you mentioned you had a fan at the Western Amateur. So you had a taste of a little bit of that high level amateur play, but actually getting to the PGA Tour, actually being a part, you think about, that was what, 2009 and 2010. So you're talking 2009, I think most people would say was the last year of Tiger's true prime.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2010, the tour is still buzzing. What was that like?
Unbelievable. The first event for me was the Sony in Hawaii, and it doesn't really feel like a PGA Tour event. It almost feels like a PGA Tour event on vacation. A lot of us, you go to the course, there's not a big range there. There's not the equipment vans. All the bells and whistles are kind of not there, even though it's an amazing event and it's great, but it's almost that event that feels like a lot of the big guys will come to and kind of use as their, hey, bring the family, bring the wife down, we'll have a little vacation and I'll start my season off here. And for us as a rookie, it was like, hang on, this doesn't feel as big as it should be. So I didn't, no excuse. Like I still was pumped. I was signed some sponsorship deals. There's still a new world to me being on the PGA Tour. And so I missed the cut in Sony. And then the next event back then was you'd fly back to California, and which is now the American Express. It was the Bob Hope Classic. So I went to the Bob Hope Classic. Now this felt more like a PGA Tour event, even though if it was still just ramping up a little bit. So you'd had the equipment vans. The weather was perfect. It always is in Palm Springs at that time of the year. But you're playing with amateurs, and it's 3, 4 different golf courses, easy golf courses, perfect weather. It almost felt like a celebrity pro-am. So you ease in, but also they had in and out for free on the range. There was a big van there, so I smashed about 17 of those for the week. But
That's a rookie. That's a rookie PGA Tour player move. I
that's
feel
right.
like.
That's right. I got a taste of in and out, and I was addicted. But it's there was I won't dribble on too long, but I shot 10 under in the third round to miss the cut by one shot. Now, because it's a 3 round cut at the Bob Hope Classic, back then the cut was, I think I shot 12 under and the cut was -13. Easy golf courses, good weather. So, I missed the cut, but I had a little bit of confidence. So then I go to the next week, which there should have been a billboard in lights that said, "This is the PGA Tour," because we went to, back then it was the FBR Open, which is now the Waste Management Open.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, it was just as big in 2009 as it was this year. There was, I think, Saturday had around about 230,000 people counted through the gates. You had the Super Bowl was in Arizona. I want to say either the Super Bowl was in Arizona that week, or Arizona was in the Super Bowl.
I believe the
So
Cardinals would have been in the Super Bowl. You're exactly right. Yep.
yeah, so it was crazy, and then I come out and I play well the first 2 rounds. I'm in the final group going on Saturday. I'm playing great. I'm leading, and I'm like, this is insane. And so Saturday, I played fantastic. I think Saturday was one of the best golf feelings of my life. I played the 16th hole, hold about a 15-footer for birdie, and I was playing later in the afternoon. So the crowd was quite boisterous. There was still the grandstands. There's about 20,000 people, and they were all fairly intoxicated. So they were having a good time. So being
Fairly.
able to be a
That's
golfer and hole a 20-foot
the
putt
polite way to put it.
yeah, a polite way to put it, in a stadium atmosphere where you dream of playing the PGA Tour as a golfer, but as a kid you dream about playing in a stadium, whatever sport it is, soccer, football, anything, and to have that feeling and be able to hold a putt and fist pump, and I went on the last round. I was right there. I had an opportunity. I parred. Everyone's got their stories, but I parred the 13th with a 3-iron in par 5. I parred the 16th with a 6-iron in par 5, and I bogeyed 17 from green side. That's a short par 4. So, where Brooks Koepka chipped in to win that year, I chipped on and 3-putted from there. So I missed the playoff by 2 shots. I choked it like a inexperienced PGA Tour player should. But that was probably the closest and the best I've ever played in my career. But yeah, that was welcome to the PGA Tour. $240,000 check, the biggest check I've ever earned in my life. I partied pretty hard that night. We had a good time. I was taken under the wing by a couple of PGA Tour players that I won't mention because they're probably not known to want to be called partiers. But it was a sensational tournament. Still my favorite ever. Still my favorite to watch now. And I was lucky enough to broadcast it with PGA Tour Live this year, and it was unbelievable. So I still get kind of goosebumps when I even think about playing in that tournament and being in that arena.
You called Sam Ryder's hole in one.
I did, even though they jibbed us and they gave it to CBS and on replay, and Colt didn't know what was going on. He drinks were flying. He's like, someone's made a one. So yeah, we would technically, me and Hallie Ledbetter were the first to call it live, and it was sensational.
By the way, that 2009 FBR Open, WM Phoenix Open, Kenny Perry beat Charlie Hoffman in a playoff. Kevin Na, 13 under. You tied with David Toms at 12 under. So overlapping the James Nitties and David Toms eras right there as you guys tied at 12 under. I also, so, you said you don't want to share everything about that, the culture of the Phoenix Open back then, but we've kind of talked about it a little bit. What do people not know about Phoenix week? Not just the tournament, but everything that goes on that week.
Oh, where do I start? Back then, it was, look, it's a party event. You obviously know. The majority of the spectators don't even care if you hit a shank or if you hole out. Now, on 16 they do, because there's so much gambling going on in the crowd. You've got guys yelling at you saying, I've got you at 5-1 to make this putt while you're over it. You're trying to, I'm like, relax, champ. This is probably worth 20 grand to me, and you've got $5 on the line. So it's like I remember I was there and I was practicing putting after a round, and the crowd has to, the spectators have to funnel past the putting green. So of course you get like interested viewers coming through, and they can't even walk. There was a girl throwing up in a waste can 20 feet from the putting green. There's guys yelling
She
abuse
was managing
at you.
her waist.
Yeah, she was probably expelling some of the fun she had that day, she just, it was, and it's just fun. It was fun as a player to go hit balls and just watch the carnage unfold. But then it doesn't end there. So after the last putts hold, the bird's nest back then, there's some serious concerts. So there's a lot of money that floats around that event. I think this year there was something like $22 million in revenue just at the 16th hole. I think I'm on the low end there. So the amount of money that goes through this event, they put on really quality shows. I want to say that Maroon 5 was there at the Bird's Nest when the year I was there. So
you
they
got a
have
little Adam Levine faux hawk going right now, I think.
Yeah, I'm still hanging on to the younger years with this haircut, but that's all right. Actually, my hair just doesn't go any other way now. I wake up like this and pretty much cut my wife in the arm this morning with this little tip here. But no, there's it's an event that goes on deep into the night. It's a concert meets golf. Like, everyone knows this, but I was there as a player, unbelievable. I was there as a spectator in the stands at 16. Oakley were kind enough to give me a portion, or not give me a portion, let me sit in a portion of their sponsored area, and I was gambling. Maybe I was. Maybe not allowed to say that, but I was gambling with fun tokens and having a good time myself and yelling abuse at players. And it's all okay. Like, when you get through the gates there, the players know what they're going to get, so they're okay with it, and then the spectators know what they're allowed to do. And actually, what really interesting about the 16th hole, there's a crew of college kids that sit just off to the left. Now, I don't know if they're still there, but they are so
They could still
researched.
be in college based on where you're going
Yes,
with
they
this
could
story.
be, but these guys were so researched. They would call out certain information about players that that would get the player to look around. So usually anyone yelling at you, you're just like, yeah, whatever. Everyone says that, but they would yell out obscure facts that they've done, like hard research. I'd like to see the round table of this crew when they're coming up with all these notes before the round, but some of the stuff they would yell out is I would have players going to me like, how did he know what my second pet's name was? My dog Ruffy. They're yelling, Ruff, he's the best. And I'm like, how did he even know that? Like, so they would come up with chants. It was cool. It's just a great experience. And yeah, there's a lot of other extra curricular activities that happened that I didn't take too much part in. Like I was a simple guy that had a drink, celebrated, and had a good time. But it's a next level golf tournament, definitely on steroids for the PGA Tour.
2009, smartphones were not what they were, so they would have had to do that research ahead of time. I think is important. As I almost get hit in my makeshift studio by a
Watch out
falling
there, mate.
flag. People, yeah, might have seen that on video. But also, I mean, James, we should mention betting not only legal, but there is now a sports book at TPC Scottsdale. So you think about the wagering that you mentioned that was going on back then, and you think about where it probably is now. That's an incredible aspect of everything. You brought it up, not me. Where did they do their research? Everything that goes into a profile. I know during your career, there were some conversations about what was in your bio within PGA Tour media. What happened there?
Yes, I was, let's call it a little bit of a frisky player when it come to the media. I'd not only say what I thought, but I thought it would be fun to stick out a little bit and, get a little crazy with my bio and like most guys, it was just, what do you like doing? And I see it these days as a broadcaster. I'm laughing with whoever I'm working with. Like, really, this guy's one of his favorite things to do is be outside, drink Dr. Pepper. Just, I'm just like, come on, come up with something for us here, And it came to the point where I was like, you know what, I want to do something fun. So I put as my interests, hobbies, and I think my interests, hobbies, and dislikes younger years were girls, 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 and then good song that. And then I changed it to when I got on the PGA Tour. My interests and hobbies were girls. No, because it was a different order: clubbing, girls, and movies.
You're right.
And I
I have
remember,
it right here.
and look, it's. I have a wife. I'm happily married. I was a single 27-year-old kid, and I like to go out with my buddies and have a beer if I miss a cut, or and get shut down by the occasional girl. And I was very honest with that, and I would obviously get painted as the party boy, which I definitely wasn't. Like, the definition of party was not what I did. I did what every kind of guy my age in my situation would have done. Um, but I played it up. It didn't bother me. People around me knew who I was, and actually, some people would come and hang out with me and like, dude, you don't even party at all. What is going on? And I'm like, look, it's just relax, like I'm not hanging off the rafters, yelling abuse at people. So it was fun. It got me some TV time. I got told one of the years my TV points were top 10 on the PGA Tour. I don't know how they worked that out, but it's like I was like, okay, I've played well in 4 or 5 events, and I'm top 10 on the PGA Tour in TV, so something must have worked. So I kind of like to be a bit of a rebel that way, and just mess with the media a little bit. And you can do that if you're secure enough to not listen to the hate or listen to the stories that get embellished. But yeah, you just don't see it. Like, no one's fun now on the PGA Tour. I even had, look, I'll tell this quickly, but I had a story about a very high-ranking major winner that came up to me on the range at Colonial. I'm not going to say his name. He was not happy with my clubbing, girls, and movies tagline. And he was like, really, you've got to deface the PGA Tour by saying this and blah, 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 blah. And I just went, mate, like I get on with everyone, and I was like, mate, just relax. It was a joke. I could have put on hanging with friends, reading a book, and walking down on a beach. Like you want me to be boring. I'm trying to get a little bit more traction, create a brand. Like just relax a little bit. So he settled down a little bit after that. But yeah, a lot of people weren't happy with it. Not only spectators and media, but some of the players.
I just want to. This is from a Golf Digest article in 2009 at the Byron Nelson. You said, "I'm pretty brutally honest there, but really, I'm exactly like any other single 26-year-old. I love going to the movies. I love hanging out with mates and having a couple of drinks in bars and chasing girls. It's typical of a guy. I'm just the only one that actually says it and doesn't say I like hanging out and fishing when I really do normal stuff. I mean, I could be monotone and boring for you guys, but that just wouldn't be fun." So I think that checks out 14 years later with exactly what you just said.
Yeah, well done at finding that one. Yeah, sometimes I'd get a little peeved because the media would. I think I got drug tested the most on one year. I got drug tested the most on the PGA Tour, and I'm like, "Ooh, random drug test 7 times this year. That's interesting." And I was like, "Guys, I don't do drugs. I'm not into that stuff. I'm just a typical Aussie that will have a beer with his mates. Like, just relax." But it was what it was. Wouldn't change any of it. It was pretty fun. My wife just laughs at it now. She's like, "Yeah, you're not even that exciting. Just relax, mate."
Well, we can weave that all together. The next line is Nitties, an Australian who finished second at PGA Tour qualifying at the PGA Tour qualifying tournament last year, said he and his caddy have cut alcohol from their diet for a 6-week period in an effort to string together some quality golf. So you had that. Your caddy is mentioned there. This is a great opportunity for redemption. How you mentioned that you're a married man now. How do your caddy and your wife and everything all come together, perhaps around this time or a little later than this time?
Oh, well done. Yes. So when we did that on the PGA Tour, and I'll tighten this up, me and my caddy were like, you know what? Let's just focus. Let's just play as well as we can from in 2009 from Byron Nelson, where I finished 12th. I played with Dustin Johnson in the final round, but didn't play well in the final round. Mike Leachman ended up winning that tournament. So I was like, okay, let's just concentrate. So when I say cut out alcohol, I was a social drinker. I still am. Where it was like if I made a cut, I wasn't drinking or having a drink. But if I missed a cut, we'd go out and just have a couple and whatever, explore the city. So we took off. We had to take off an extra week because I qualified for the US Open at Bethpage. So I did the qualifier. Qualifier was 9 for 1 spot. So 9 guys
Wow.
for 1 spot. And we're in New York doing the qualifier. And no, sorry, we were in Ohio. And I'm like, really? We waited around all this time. I was excited to get it. I went birdie, birdie. I stole that 1 spot, got to play in Bethpage. So the alcohol ban had to go for another couple of weeks till the US Open. So it ended up being like 9 weeks straight where we didn't touch it. We were fully focused. I didn't play well at that US Open. It was kind of a funky US Open with flooding and
Yeah.
golf balls were plugging in the green from 200 yards out. That's how wet the course was. It didn't feel like a US Open. If you took down the signs, you'd be like, this is just like a week where everyone's trying to get it together. And the eventual winner, Lucas Glover, won that US Open. Ricky Barnes was, I think, set the
Ricky
record.
Barnes was
Yeah.
was gone. He had won it. He had locked it up on Friday.
Well, he set the record, lowest scoring 36 hole total. So, yeah, he was 12 or 13 under or something crazy. Anyway, Tiger finished fourth. Great event. But, yeah, let's fast forward a little bit. A couple of years later, my caddy on the Korn Ferry Tour, I think this is a story you're trying to get at. He got a number off a girl at a bar. I was out of town. He came, I came back in town. He's like, hey, we're going on a blind date with these two girls. And I'm like, I hate blind dates. Why are we doing this? Anyway, I had no clue what she looked like. He was like, I was 3 sheets to the wind when I got her number, so I don't really know what she looked like. So I'm like, great, we're going on a Tuesday night to a blind date with girls we don't know what they look like. Hate to be shallow, but it's I still would have had a nice dinner with them. But I was like, it's a Tuesday night. I'd rather be watching Entourage. So we go in, and I'm like, wow, your if that's your girl, she is beautiful. And he's like, wow, your girl's beautiful also. And I was like, well, this worked out. So we had a good dinner with him, and then early night, and texted the next day, and he was like, "What do you think of James?" And to what does your friend think of James, to the girl that he got the number off, vice versa, whatever. And she was like, "Well, funny story. I like James, and my friend likes you." So, long story short, it was the kangaroo switcheroo. We called it for a long time. She was in my phone as Katie Switcheroo for a long time. Um, so then, I love it. Wisconsin girl says what she thinks, and now we're married 10 years later. So it's my caddy is not married to the other girl. That didn't last very long. He was traveling the world though. He is married with a kid though, so he is very happy. So it all worked out. It was meant to be.
What a story. And now you're a true Dallas guy. I guess that's the middle ground between Australia and Wisconsin is yeah, look at that. You got a is that a Cowboys shirt specifically?
Yes, it's a cowboy representing the city shirt. Look, I'm an adopted Texan. That's what I like to say. So yes, it's I'm a Dallas guy.
But I know you've been in recent years, you had been wearing Cowboys or I guess the star hat out in public. You've had some interesting sponsors over the year. And obviously, people, like you said, when you got to that first PGA Tour event, people are saying, all right, who is this charismatic Aussie with this mustache, with the hair? Let's get our hands on him. What are some of those sponsorships that maybe you're proud of and not so proud of over the years?
Wow. I was very lucky to get any of those sponsorships. Especially clothing wise, I had a couple offers, but I tell you, I had an offer off Travis Matthew. Now that brand was just in the startup phase. And this is before. Now we talk about Travis Matthews has been bought out by Callaway for, I
Mhm.
don't, you would know better about this than me, but I swear it was like a $200 million deal.
A lot. Yep.
But they were kind of offering equity back then when they offered me the sponsorship. Now it was a small amount of equity, but if I took that sponsorship, it would have been a lot of money. I heard some players that had equity that were playing on tour with me. I won't mention names, but some players that had a fair bit of equity because they were friends with Travis were before when he owned the company fully were, I mean, something to 12 to 15 to 20% of the company, which if you work it out, it's going to be filtered down and into different shares. But yeah, I think one player walked away with about $12 million, and this is a guy that's never won on the PGA Tour, played successfully on the PGA Tour, but that's 12 million bucks. So, look, I went with Oakley, had a fantastic relationship. They gave me an offer that was way too good for what I deserved, and when I say that, it's still not. It's not a lot of money, but it's still great. A kid from Newcastle that was playing for meat pies on the putting green and being happy. So it was one of those things where I was very ecstatic, had a long term relationship with them. And they even let me kind of design some of the shirts and clothes. And this was kind of prior to when Rory came on after me. Not that I'm saying it went from me to Rory, but there's other high profile players with Oakley. But so I had some fun with it. I wore some pretty outlandish stuff. I'm sure you would label it as probably European schmedium fit. So funky colors, kind of like Hovland is
Yeah.
doing, with
But it sounds like you were more by choice. He says he wears what he's given. It sounds like you had an actual say in some of that.
I mean, it's yeah. Like I wore Jay Lindeberg back in the day, my amateur days. That what Hovland's wearing right now, and I mean, there's so many different options. If he's not wearing by choice, like then I don't know what's going on there because there's some really cool stuff that they make. They make suits and dress shirts, all the stuff. Anyway, so there was some. I didn't have a lot of sponsorships. My club deals were not great. I signed a big club deal for 2010, which eventually cost me, missing the first 8 cuts in a row. And if I was to
Mm.
give any tips to, young players coming onto PGA Tour is like, use what you like. Do not sign anything for money. So that equipment, is my fault. I went for the money, and I pulled out of that contract because it was costing my performance on the course. And certain companies want you to use the newest ball, which sometimes the newest ball back then, with the transition period of all the golf balls, wasn't as good as what I was previously using. So yeah, it was. I had some good sponsorships, but Oakley was, really one of the best relationships I've had.
So 2017, Travis Matthews sold to Callaway for 125.5 million, all
Okay,
cash.
okay, I
Not to
spiked that a
harp,
little
not
bit.
to harp on that, not to
Yeah,
harp on that,
man.
but I'll bring that up. Uh, let's talk about your career right now. And we obviously got to know each other doing PGA Tour Live, but really in the last year and a half, the Korn Ferry Tour has risen to the surface as your bread and butter. Being that color analyst with Shane Bacon on so many of the calls this past year, hosting One Shot Away on CBS, where you get to know so many of these players, you get to know their stories. We just heard, we're now almost 50 minutes in, it looks like. Of course, time flies like that. You talked a lot about your career on the rise, the journey getting there. When you now look back at these Korn Ferry Tour guys, what are you seeing covering these players as they try to make that next step up to the PGA Tour?
What I'm seeing is it's the new superstar of golf is coming to the Korn Ferry Tour. So back when I played, there was still very, very talented tours around the world. European tour was very, very strong. Japanese tour was strong. Asia was very strong. So there was all these tours around the world that would kind of pick apart a lot of the really good players from coming to America. Now what I see is the Korn Ferry Tour is the second best tour in the world. Now, a lot of people don't like when I say that, and I am biased because I'm not saying it because I work for the Korn Ferry Tour. I'm just saying it based on the scores I'm seeing week in, week out, and the quality of courses that they've played. There's still 7 or 8 courses that they play in the rotation that I played on, and I know how difficult they are or how easy they are. And the scores that they are putting up, I know there's technology, I know the game's changed, but it's just insane. And the quality of the bunched players at every top of every leaderboard, and being out there and just seeing it, like I've seen a lot of these talented guys. I truly think it's what I'm seeing is watch as much Corn Ferry Tour as you can, because
Mm-hmm.
if you like gambling, if you like knowing your golf, or if you're just a golf nerd, there's the superstars that are coming off the Corn Ferry Tour now. Like, I think the graduate class of this season is going to at least get 4 to 5 PGA Tour wins next year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a limb, it's a small limb that I'm out on, but I believe the talent that is coming from the Corn Ferry Tour. And for me, it's so much fun because I get to see it and I just get to know these guys, and I'm like, you don't even know you're going to be a superstar next year, do you, mate? Like, you're going to win 3 times. And I mean, the fact that Ludwig Aubert was, in college not even 6 months
Yeah.
ago, and he's top 30 in the world. Or he's already won on the PGA and DP World Tour. So he didn't even get to the Corn Ferry Tour. So with PGA Tour University, you get top 5 guys every season coming out of college. So I think it's not only is Corn Ferry Tour the second best tour in the world, I think now the draft for the Corn Ferry Tour or the PGA Tour is college golf, because every golfer from around the world wants to play. I mean, every amateur golfer from around the world wants to play college in America. So now you're just getting the next best prodigies that are going to come to professional golf. So the fact that they're coming through the Corn Ferry Tour, we get to see them. Yeah, it's a special place to be. It's not fun because you've got to play really, really well to get that
Mm-hmm.
PGA Tour card. But it's as far as a broadcasting and an analyst point of view, I get to see it unfold in front of my eyes. So it's an enjoyment.
I agree with you, by the way, about that those 4 or 5 wins that we're going to get next year. And you mentioned it, Ludwig Aubert is not one of those players. So I'm saying I'm agreeing with you, 4 or 5 on top of him. I know I have my guy who I think is going to probably win 2 of those. Who is the player to watch coming out of the Korn Ferry Tour for this upcoming PGA Tour season?
Oh, one player.
All
That's
right, you give me multiple. I'm saying I have one player on my mind, but I want to hear the multiple players that you have.
Okay, I'm going to run through multiple players quickly, and
Mm,
this isn't discounting like the other talent that got through, but I'll run through quickly for anyone that loves to gamble, anyone that thinks that these guys are going to win. But you've got Adrian de Montdeshissa, a guy that came out of college.
that was my number one,
I
by the
thought
way.
you were going to say that. I was yelling on social media for him to get on the Ryder Cup team. Now he came out, plays his first Korn Ferry Tour event, first professional event as a professional, and wins. And he's like, "All right, thanks for coming, guys. This is pretty easy." Then he goes to his second event, and he's like, "You know what? It was, one win's not great. I might as well get two." Now loses in a playoff in his second event, and then rattles off four top tens after that. I think he tied the Korn Ferry Tour record for professional debut top tens. So big European. He's a Belgian kid. He walks down the range as a rookie, and even the veteran Korn Ferry Tour guys, everyone just kind of looks around. So he's got a presence already. Perfect swing. I was watching him, hits it both ways. It's just pretty to watch. He's almost like a Ludwig 2.0. So I think he's going to make a splash. You got who else is there? Chris Goddard, another one of my favorite guys. Went to Rutgers, then transferred to Oklahoma. He's a guy that averages 330 off the tee and has great accuracy. And guess what? He's a wedge player as well. So that's a guy I think. He's a guy that I looked at that was pretty impressive. The Cootie twins, first twins on the PGA Tour since Curtis and Alan Strange. So, but they're so good. Pearson Coody he's nearly won on the PGA Tour already, and he hasn't even had a full season out there. He won 4 Korn Ferry Tour events in a year. He's a real deal. And Parker, his twin brother, if not played better than him in the second part of the season. And then I'll just rapid fire some names. Jacob Knapp, biggest biceps on tour, hits at 330, works security in the summer at a nightclub,
Oh
and yep,
yeah.
he's on the PGA Tour and made 17 cuts in a row on the Korn Ferry Tour. Wilson Furr, under the radar guy, super talented. I think he'll do something special. Alexandra Toasty, fiery fella, not well liked on the Korn Ferry Tour. I had some stories about him. I can't comment on him. I've never met him, but plays well at really tough golf courses. And then Chan Kim, I think, is a kid that won 7 times worldwide on
Yeah.
the Japanese tour. He's played in every major. I think his game's suited more to the PGA Tour. So, him, and then Highsmith, Bridgman, and Chandler Phillips. There's another couple names that just I'll float around that all are very talented.
Chan Kim, just to add on to that, you call him a kid. He's 33 years old. He's hovered around the top 100 in the world rankings for a while now because of what he's done at other tours. He's an American who's gone abroad, now comes back. I see a lot of Eric Cole coming up in him. He's a guy that every
Yeah.
time he's played over here, he's made cuts, he's played well. It feels like it just hasn't necessarily put it all together, but he can be an immediate, consistent player. I think in his 30s, he's been around the golf world before. So I think you just named a ton of guys for people to look out for. ADDC, obviously, that's you know the guy. I think it's going to be him and Ludwig. You know, I guess Ludwig will win or lose to Eric Cole or win Rookie of the Year this year, so he won't be eligible. But it's going to feel a lot like they're the two breakout stars next year. In terms of all that broadcasting, I do want to ask, what have you realized? You talked about having fun with the media when you were a player. Now being on the other side, how do you see the game through a different lens?
Uh, so I'll say it in 3 quick parts. First of all, no one really has fun with the media anymore. Everyone's a robot out there, and even the craziest guys, like Joel Damon. Like Joel Damon would have been. I played Korn Ferry Tour with him. Great guy, but there was 20 of Joel Damons out. Like we were all out there having fun, and I like how he's a little bit deprecative. Actually, needs to think of himself as a better player. But look at him; he's one of the superstars of Full
Mm-hmm.
Swing, a Netflix series, and he's a guy that hovers around top 100 in the world. So I think guys need to really not get told what to say, be okay with being themselves, being secure, being confident. Guys never like, there's no rivalries on the PGA Tour. There's no guys that want to be the assassin, the bad guy, if you
Hmm.
will. Everyone wants to be nice because everyone's making millions of dollars and no one wants to rub anyone the wrong way. I just wish that, there was a little bit more personalities out on the PGA Tour.
Yep.
From a playing perspective, so you do broadcasting, and then you think about things that when I played, I was like, whenever I was out on the golf course and I felt like the world was against me, which you see from the other side of the camera, you see these players, the way their attitudes are in certain times of their rounds, it costs them shots. But everyone does the same thing. Everyone has the same tendencies on a difficult par three. Everyone will miss it in the same spot, and everyone gets the same bad breaks and good breaks. Not compiling on top of each other, but it all shakes out the same. So if I was a player now, I would watch a lot of the coverage,
Hmm.
just for research base. How am I swinging it? What's my course, analysis like? My game plan. But then you would find out, oh, everyone was hitting that shot fat, or everyone
Yeah.
was mishitting that chip shot, or it wasn't just me, or everyone that putt was staying straight for everyone else. So we see it. It makes us look like we have a crystal ball when I'm like, there's some putts I'll be like, this guy can't make this 6 footer unless he pulls it, So it's stuff we see. And then the last thing I'll say that you see watching is how good they really are. So TV makes a lot of shots look really easy because, especially around the greens, with the elevated camera viewpoint, it makes shots just look so much easier than they are. And then I'm sweating and I'm not even hitting the shot, and they hit it to a foot or nearly make it, and it just shows you how automatic so many players are, not only from around the greens but hitting it that far and that straight, and it shows it's a different element to the game that there was around 10 years ago. Like, everyone's just that much better. So I try to get that out as much as I can as an analyst, but people will kind of lash back and be like, that was an easy chip. I'm like, dude, you don't see the green was 4 foot above him. He was into the grain with no grass to work with, to a tight pin. Like, he nearly holed it. Yeah, it looks easy on TV, but it's very impressive. So it's I think it's my job to kind of be critical when they hit a bad shot, but also try to accentuate the fact that how good they are, and what you're seeing is actually just TV gold.
I want to talk for a second about specifically, I guess, Australian golf, because we hear it a lot. A lot of Australia wants more big golf tournaments. That's been a lot of the PGA Tour versus Live Golf conversation. What does Australia want? Why is Australia getting left out of certain things? Why is the Hero World Challenge played the same week as the Australian Open? What is the culture around golf right now in Australia like, and what do the people want out of the game?
They want more golf in Australia. They want more of the best players in the world in Australia. You saw it with Live. We have such a good following from the younger community in golf now, albeit that was a pretty party atmosphere. But if you go to a golf tournament in Australia, like, people would take a day off work to go watch golf, and it can be a small event. So they want that. We used to have it. The full series in America, the PGA Tour decimated the Australian Tour. Look, it's not their fault. Like, whatever money drives, whatever viewership drives, that's just the way it goes. But we have this landscape of, my opinion, the best golf in the world. And we have it compacted into a small area. And the fact that the Australasian tour has been decimated because, in the past we used to have Rory, Spieth, even Tiger would all come play the Australian Open. Now they were getting fairly lucrative appearance fees, but the tournament would make so much money off those players. So it was a win-win. And then those
Mhm.
guys would come down. I talked to Spieth in Australia. He's like, this place is amazing. I love the Australian Open. I'm coming back next year. And he did. And it's like, Rory was like, I love the sandbelt. I love playing in Australia. So it's the fact that, cut a long story short, the PGA Tour with the fall season, the wraparound season, it killed the off season for all the US based players, all the guys that played on the PGA Tour. So they want to have Christmas. They want to have time off, late December, early January. and they're like, well, I need to take some reps here. I can't go down to Australia and play. So that's what ruined it. But there is a healthy golf community in Australia that really love the game, and we have the courses that just pop off TV. If you've watched the President's Cup, that the one Tiger played down at Royal Melbourne, even if you watch the Australian Open just gone by, like some of the players were like, this is the greatest course I've ever played. This is the best condition course I've ever played. So of course I'm biased, but it's, I miss playing golf in Australia myself. The Australian Open and anything played on the Sandbelt rivals nearly any PGA Tour event I ever played. So it's a place that's special to me, but it should be worked into the world of golf somehow. And obviously, the fracture we are seeing with the whole golf arena is a big part of that, where people are starting to realize that playing around the world is not just worth their time or money. It's actually a good place to go play and even hone your game.
So maybe it is that without the wraparound season moving forward, maybe there will be more opportunity there. We saw Justin Thomas and Max Homa go play the Nedbank this year in South Africa. Max Homa said if there was a wraparound season, he's probably not playing that because, he probably has to play certain events on the PGA Tour in the fall. And, he did get he said him and Justin Thomas got a healthy package for playing in that event. So maybe there is that, future for me. I feel like maybe some patience on everyone's side could have figured something out. I know there's a lot of internal criticism that you mention all of the excitement around golf in Australia. There's a critique that some of the brands, some of the sponsors won't dole out the money that they need to produce those events in Australia. So there's a lot going on. I guess my question here for you is, if you were in charge, if you're the chair of Australian golf, what are you doing to help promote the sport right now?
Well, I'm obviously doing deals with Live because they've got unlimited money. So, yeah, it's hard. Australia's only a population of 26 million people, and golf is maybe the fourth to fifth sport on the totem pole when it comes to popularity. So, creating revenue for that is nearly impossible unless you get the best players in the world. So, like once again, when Tiger came in 2009, played the Australian Masters, there were something like 15,000 tickets to the tournament sold out of country. So you're getting people flying from China, Japan, America, neighboring countries to come
New
watch Tiger in
Zealand.
Australia, New Zealand, of course. So just putting the money together of the revenue that you're making for the economy, that's why Tiger was paid out of the government would subsidize a lot of the players' appearance fees. It was just business. It's worth it. But until you can get those major players and until you can have time for them to come over, so they're not worn out, it's a very tough sell in Australia. I'm not going to act like I know what to do because I was a part of the Australian tour and I was a part of complaining that we're playing in these events worth $100,000 purse where the winner gets $18,000, and the expenses and travel in Australia is higher than America. So you're barely like covering expenses just to play on the biggest tour in your country. And I'm not going to act like I know the answers to that, but I do know that it will help when the wraparound season's cut from the PGA Tour. We can possibly get entice some of the bigger players to come over, and it will boom again, because 20 years ago when Greg Norman was playing on the Australian Tour, we were getting huge support from sponsorship deals. There was just a lot of money for the 80s. The game was never better in Australia, so it's there's a lot of layers to that. We've already talked. I've talked underwater with a mouthful of marbles in this podcast. So, me and you, we could have a 17 coffees and just chat forever. So
go to the Kookaburra down in St. Augustine,
yeah,
get a
there you
real
go. Quality
Australian coffee. No, we might have to table that for a second conversation. I'm glad that we could have this. I wanted to talk about your life and career. The next time will be about specific topics.
I like
But
it.
before I do let you go, where can people find you this coming year, I guess, and where can people find you on social media?
Well, so Korn Ferry Tour broadcasts on the Golf Channel. Please watch. It's not a PGA Tour quality kind of. We don't have 150 people working on the broadcast, but me and Shane Bacon, we have so much fun, and
Mhm.
everyone behind the scenes does a great job at making it fun for the viewer. It's definitely not the same as a regular broadcast. We're trying to do something exciting and really kind of make the guys the stars. And, that one shot away, hopefully I get to do that show again. Um, 5 of the 8 guys that we followed on One Shot Away, which is almost like a full swing TV show, made it to the PGA Tour. And 3 of them are at final stage in next week. So there could be 8 of 8 from One Shot Away, guys that we follow in like a reality series throughout the year on the Korn Ferry Tour that go to the PGA Tour. So it's pretty impressive stuff. Also, chasing Tourbound podcasts. I interview a lot of the guys going to the PGA Tour, so it's a great place to find out about guys that you mightn't have heard of that are heading to the big show. So they're kind of the details of what I'm into. And then if you want to laugh at me being an idiot on Instagram or Twitter, then you can follow under pretty much anything that rhymes with Nitties.
I was going to say, if you want to follow James and Shane Bacon's endeavors on whatever golf course they're playing and spending more time on than actually broadcasting on a given Korn Ferry Tour broadcast day, give James Nitties a follow. James, thanks so much for doing this. I'll see you and talk to you soon in person.
Sounds good, Jeff. Thanks again for having me on.
Love all that from James. Not just the golf stuff, the golf talk, the nerd golf stuff was awesome. But I mean, the story about meeting his wife always gets me, and some of the stories off the course, some of just hanging with the guys, the Aussies, I think is so unique and interesting to him. So looking forward to hearing him more this year, especially on the Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour Live, and elsewhere as well. One shot away wherever it may be. Big shout out to my producer, Sam Brief, for getting this done for us. That was the second episode of 2024 for Eyes on Golf. A lot more coming this year. Doug Smith, James Nitties, we are rolling along. Thanks so much for listening.